Hello, everyone. Dr. Anita Stewart McCafferty here, faculty member with the Educational Leadership Department at the University of Southern Maine. And it is once again my pleasure to welcome you to Module 2 of EDU 695, a special topics class where we're focusing on instructional coaching and mentoring teachers. I am so delighted about your experiences already with mentoring and coaching. It was really exciting to read what you had to share, your thoughts about coaching and mentoring, and to kind of see the examples that are already existing. I think it's clear to me, and I hope it's clear to you, that there's some work to be done still. We can certainly work to improve our practices so that we can indeed improve teacher retention, help to improve teacher development, and of course, improve student learning. This week in Module 2, we're going to focus on beginning the year successfully and then getting a clear picture of reality. And so our guiding questions for this week are as follows. What do you bring to mentoring and coaching? How will you introduce your mentee or your collaborating teacher to learn more about important school information? And this is especially helpful to the novice teacher. How can you help your mentee or collaborating teacher prepare for the first weeks of school? How do you help your novice teacher and your collaborating teachers create a community of learners? How will you help your novice or collaborating teacher in implementing routines right from the get-go? How will you reinforce classroom and behavior management and introduce this to the teachers that you're working with? And why is it important to encourage your mentee or collaborating teacher to reach out to parents? It's often one of those things that teachers like to avoid, and there are some good reasons why sometimes we like to avoid parent communication. But it's so vitally important to create that partnership with parents and home right away. And the final guiding question, why is gaining a clear picture of reality important for both the coach and the collaborating teacher? And so what I mean by gaining a reality comes from the work from the impact cycle. And it's really talking about just gaining a current picture of what are already the skills, the competencies, the knowledge base that your collaborating teacher is bringing to the table. The 3 module objectives for this week are to explain ways that coaches and mentors can gain a clear picture of their own reality in collaborating teachers and mentees' classrooms and determine the areas in need of improvement. So we start to look at things like the use of video, which is so important. I know a lot of us avoid video, but being able to video classroom practice and to be able to reflect upon it is a really important way to gain a clear picture of what the current reality is. Of course, observations are helpful, and there are a number of other, conversations, one-on-one conversations that you can have, starting to look at student work, starting to look at your plans. All of those are ways for us to start to gain a clear picture of the base, the reality, the current reality. Our second module objective is to apply strategies for creating an inclusive classroom community to mentee and coaching dilemmas. And so this you're going to see as kind of a through line as you move through the course. Often we're going to look at different dilemmas that might come up in a novice teacher's classroom in particular, but certainly can exist in more veteran teachers' classrooms as well. And so we're going to think about how do we apply what we're learning to these various mentoring dilemmas. And this week in particular, we're going to look at applying those to the idea of creating inclusive classroom communities, which is vitally important. The third objective for this week is to describe why teacher autonomy is important for successful coaching. So during this week, as I made mention, you are, of course, going to be reading from the impact cycle. And I'm asking that you read chapter 2, and then also part of the appendix, which is focused on data gathering tools. So this is going to help us as we move into that coaching cycle and think about observation as one of the key components of that cycle. So we'll look at data gathering tools from the impact cycle. Then you'll continue to read from Mentoring in Action. And this week, you're going to start part 2, which starts to get at the month-by-month curriculum kind of guide to this idea of mentoring. And so I'm asking for you to look at August and September. August before school even starts, so creating that relationship with your mentee, and then thinking about how you help them acclimate to the school community, to the community at large. And then thinking in September, what are those procedures and routines that you can help them establish from the get-go that will set them up for success? Not only themselves, but also the students in which they serve and the families and communities that they serve. So as I mentioned earlier, this, when you get to the month-by-month guides, it's chock full of really useful tools. So, you know, preparing to mentor a teacher before you meet your novice teacher. It has key questions and directions that you might want to consider, prompts and activities to do. So the idea when you're moving through the selections, for like August and September, you might not read, you know, word for word in terms of like, oh, this is what I'm doing right now. But I want you to really have a sense of the kinds of questions, the kinds of activities, the kinds of acts that you can be taking on. And so you might want to flag, you know, the portions of these books. Oh, I'm going to come back. I want to make sure I come back to that. I want to encourage you also, you started a journal around the Mentoring in Action. It's great as we continue to read different month by month that you think about those reflection prompts in that journal and write. I encourage you, writing, I'm a firm believer that writing is thinking. So that idea of reflecting and thinking about how you might use these resources in action is really important. You'll be invited this week to complete a couple of learning activities, and you will be looking at a learning activity that is focusing around one of those dilemmas, mentoring dilemmas that I talked about earlier, including all students in the community of learner, and then being able to compose and submit a brief written response to the prompt of explaining ways that coaches and mentors can gain a clear picture of reality in their collaborating teachers and mentees classrooms, and to determine the areas in need of improvement. The discussion prompt for this week is really focused on the idea of why teacher autonomy is central to coaching success. So for the discussion prompt this week, you're asked to read a brief article by Jim Knight. Now, Jim Knight, you remember, is the author of The Impact Cycle, and he's been at this work for a really long time. And so we're going to look at his article, Why Teacher Autonomy is Central. And then after reading the article, I'm going to ask for you to choose from 3 different discussion prompts. So choose 2 of the prompts that you are interested in responding to. And you might want to modify the prompts if they don't work for you exactly as written, to reflect either your current role, hypothetical or imagined role or reality for your school or district. I think you're going to have a wonderful week of reading, thinking, discussing, and applying these principles for improving our teacher leadership skills. So have a great week.